Hey, and welcome back. This is Mr. Finn's Stogie School, and these episodes are meant to be ideas, basically helpful topics, educational cigar topics that as I'm in the shop, guys are coming in and noticing lately, for example, even experienced cigar smokers, they may know a few things about the different types of wrappers, but they don't know all the wrappers and all the differences, where they originate and how they can affect the flavor, the taste, the profile, and things like that. And there's just some overall misconception with different wrappers, and the names get really confusing. So this video, we're going to just kind of go through wrappers. We're going to stick to cigar wrappers. And what I want to do is go over the different types. We're going to break down the different types of cigar wrappers, what you should know about them, just general flavor profiles. Obviously, everything's going to be slightly different from one to the next. And then some different cigars that feature that particular type of wrapper, not the rafters, wrapper. And the cigars we're going to mention will be specifically ones that are available at the Nelson Laguasto Cigar Store in Greensburg, or available at nlcigar.com. So let's just go ahead and jump right in, okay? So, Carajo, one particular wrapper, Carajo, originally grown in Cuba and was the popular Cuban tobacco from the late 40s to the early 60s. Eventually, it became susceptible to disease and mold and things like that, and just basically became hard to continue to grow. Today, we have several hybridized seeds of Carajo that are out there, but we do have the Iroa family in Honduras that are still making the authentic Cuban seed Carajo. Carajo is often associated with, I would say, spice and earth flavors. And just as an example, the JRE Aladino. The nice thing about this, not only is this a Carajo wrapper, the cellophane's a little reflecting some light, but not only is it a Carajo wrapper, but this one is also a authentic Carajo wrapper, binder, and filler. Other cigars, the Iroa First 20 Years Colorado. That Colorado actually refers to colors. So as we go through these, we'll kind of point out some other things that are important to know, but when you hear the term Colorado, we're talking about color. So the Iroa First 20 Years Colorado is a Carajo wrapper with a Colorado color. Okay. Also, the Don Pepin Garcia Blue, that is a Carajo Oscuro wrapper. Oscuro typically refers to darker color wrappers, so that Don Pepin Garcia Blue, and the My Father Vegas Cubanus is also a Carajo wrapper. So those are some examples of cigars with Carajo wrappers. And obviously the Christoph Carajo Limitada. Can't forget that. Now, Criollo. A lot of people pronounce that wrong, spelled C-R-I-O-L-L-O, pronounced Criollo, almost like playing with a yo-yo, Criollo. It's one of the original tobaccos used in cigar making. The term itself means native seeds. Just like Carajo, the Criollo can also be susceptible to disease and mold, so there's also hybridized seeds of the Criollo as more. If I were to compare it to the Carajo, a little bit more sweetness, maybe a little bit more cocoa. And a good example of this cigar would be the Christoph Criollo. Okay? Now, moving on to Sumatra. Originally, this tobacco was coming from the Indonesian island of Sumatra. A lot of the seeds are now the Sumatran seeds from Sumatra. A lot of them are grown in Honduras and Ecuador. Common flavors, baking spice, earth, definitely sweetness, and sometimes some floral notes. A lot of cigars, surprisingly, use a Sumatra wrapper. Just to rattle off a few here, the Tatuaje Cojonu, that's an Ecuadorian Sumatra. The Undercrown Sungrown, an Ecuadorian Sumatra. Here's an example here, the Monte Cristo, as fashioned by A.J. Fernandez, okay? That is an Ecuadorian Sumatra. The Tatuaje Skinny Monster, Ecuadorian Sumatra. The Bolivar Cofradia, Ecuadorian Sumatra. My Father the Judge right here. This is another Ecuadorian Sumatra. And even one of my favorite cigars, the Oliva Serie V Melanio. It's an Ecuadorian Sumatra. Now, I keep saying Ecuadorian Sumatra, Ecuadorian Sumatra. What that means is whenever you have kind of two countries back to back, Ecuador, Sumatra, the second country is where the seed came from, or the area the seed came from. The first is where it's grown. So it is a Sumatran seed grown in Ecuador, Ecuadorian Sumatra. Now, Habano. So Habano generally means seed from Cuba, Cuban seed. It's often associated with spicy cigars. Habano is grown in several countries. I would say often associated with some fuller body cigars, although there are some mild, not mild, but milder Habano wrappers. The JRE Tadascan Habano comes to mind. It's certainly not as spicy and strong as some other Habano wrapped cigars. But there's a lot. The JRE Tadascan Habano that we mentioned. I don't have that one. The Tatuaje Series P is a Nicaraguan Habano, so a Habano seed grown in Nicaragua. The Tatuaje 7th Natural, Ecuadorian Habano. Liga Privada Ratzilla L40 Flying Pig. The Tatuaje Miami, Tatuaje Havana 6. The My Father Le Bijou. The Don Pepin Cuban Classic. Ashton Symmetry. A lot of these are Ecuadorian Habanos. The My Father Flor de los Antillas Maduro. The Liga Privada Dirty Rat. The T52. The Pappy Van Winkle. And the My Father number 5. Habano is very popular, especially in a lot of these fuller body cigars. Now, Maduro. So Maduro is when it really refers to a process or that a leaf goes through to become Maduro, but basically it's a curing and aging process. So when the leaves are picked from the plants, they're put in a curing barn for several weeks, like a month to 2 months. It depends from farm to farm, but for a period of time that allows basically it's kind of like an oxidation process. It allows the leaves to turn to a darker brown, and then they're aged for a period of time so they get even darker. An example here of a nice Maduro, JRE, this is the Rancho Luno Maduro, the JRE Rancho Luno Maduro, one of my favorites. The Iroa First 20 Years Maduro, the El Wawense or Wise Man Maduro from Foundation Cigars, the Aladino, the JRE Aladino Maduro, the Undercrown Maduro, the San Latano Oval Maduro, the Perdomo Bourbon Barrel Aged Maduro, the Oliva Serie V, the Melanio, but the Maduro version of that. The one that I'm liking right now, the Arturo Fuente Chateau Maduro. The Christoph GC series is a Brazilian Maduro, and there's also the Tatuaje Monster Kruger, Tatuaje Monster Kruger, which is a San Andres Mexican Maduro. And a lot of the Maduros out there, are the San Andres Mexican Maduro is a very popular one right now, and that's the one again featured on the JRE Rancho Luna Maduro. Now, Cameroon. So this wrapper, this leaf does originate from Cameroon, and also sometimes grown in Central Africa, but it can also be grown in other countries as well. Again, just as taking the seeds and bringing them over. Very delicate. The Cameroon is a notorious very delicate wrapper. So it's very thin, very delicate. You'll never really see this turned into a Maduro just because of that aging process. The Cameroon's kind of just too thin to do that. True African Cameroon, from what I've heard and researched, sometimes can be a little bit more rare just because of things coming out of Africa aren't always on a very consistent schedule for, local reasons and things like that. But we have, as an example, nice breakfast cigar here, the Rocky Patel Vintage 2003 Cameroon. That's a Cameroon. The Christoph Cameroon. The La Aurora No. 2 Cameroon. The Arturo Fuente Don Carlos is a Cameroon wrapper. And also the Arturo Fuente Florfina 858 is an African Cameroon. Now, Candela. I'm not personally much of a Candela fan myself. It's crazy to think back, you know, in the 80s, Candela was such a very popular, it was the most popular cigar wrapper here in the United States. Blows my mind today to think that, but I do remember my dad still smokes them today, actually. Still enjoys the Candela wrapper, the little green cigar wrappers. But anyways, it's known for its green leaf. So let's just jump to an example here first. Oh, here it is. Now, one of the ones that we have in the store during the St. Patrick's holidays, this is the Alec Bradley Filthy Hooligan Barber Pole. And you can see it's some of it's green, some of it's brown. That's the barber pole design. But the green is the Candela. So Candela is a green wrapper leaf. So basically, it's not really allowed to oxidize. It's picked and then, you know, very soon after dried and heated to prevent oxidation from occurring and maintain that green color. And it just has a very grassy, very cedary. I like touches of cedar in my cigars. Once a cigar becomes too cedary, it's something I notice, especially with the Candela. Lots of cedar and especially lots of grass, hay, things like that. Has a very specific taste. We haven't mentioned a popular wrapper yet, Connecticut. So obviously, yes, Connecticut wrapper does originate from the United States and Connecticut, specifically the Connecticut River Valley. It's known for typically being what's called Connecticut shade, where they're grown either in shade, so they're not really receiving direct sunlight, or what's common is called Connecticut shade, also under like a cheesecloth that they'll put over the field to soften and diffuse the sun, so there's not direct sun hitting the leaves. Without that sun hitting the leaves or being grown in the shade, it keeps a lighter color. It keeps the strength subdued. Milder flavors, grass, cream, butter, and a little bit of creamy coffee. I personally don't enjoy the buttery taste, so when I try a Connecticut cigar, for me personally, if I'm noticing that buttery taste, I'm typically not a fan, so I have to find a Connecticut cigar that doesn't typically have that. It's lots and lots of Connecticut's out there, and it's also, they're very often grown in other countries. You'll often see cigars that are wrapped in what's called Ecuadorian Connecticut. It's very, very common for Connecticut seeds to be grown in Ecuador. The Christoph Connecticut is an Ecuadorian Connecticut. The Perdomo Bourbon Barrel Age Connecticut is an Ecuadorian Connecticut. The JRE Tatiscan, that's a Connecticut wrapper. The Arturo Fuente, Chateau Fuente, Connecticut shade. Diamond Crown, number 4, Connecticut shade. Monte Cristo White, Ecuadorian Connecticut shade. Ashton, Connecticut shade. 5 Vegas Gold, Ecuadorian Connecticut. Undercrown shade, Ecuadorian Connecticut shade. Christoph Britannia, Honduran Connecticut shade, which gives that one a different, interesting taste from the Christoph Connecticut. And then your Acid Blondies are Connecticut shades. Now, this is versus the Connecticut Broadleaf. So also in the Connecticut River Valley, you'll have the Connecticut Broadleaf, which are cigars that are grown in the sun. The La Aroma de Cuba El Jefe, the Charter Oak by Foundation Cigars, the San Latano Oval Maduro, and Liga Privada, number 9. These are examples of Connecticut Broadleaf. The Jaime Garcia Reserva Especial. Oh, there we go. Let's get it away. Oh, boy. There we go. Oh, there we go. The Jaime Garcia Reserva Especial. The CAO Flathead Camshaft. Okay? Now, finally, you also hear wrapper referred to as natural. Natural is also referred to as English market selection. So in Cuba, in the Cuban cigar industry, English market selection. And these were the type of wrappers that were popular for the English market, not the American market. So versus Connecticut, you know, they're a little bit darker than Connecticut because the leaves are picked when they're slightly more mature and not always grown in the shade. Somewhat similar tasting notes to Connecticut, but I would just say more profound and a little bit more sweeter. So just wanted to kind of wrap up with just a summary here. We got our different types of cigar wrappers from different regions in the world, but you can have seeds coming from one area grown in another country. So you can have Sumatra seeds grown in Ecuador, for example, which is very common. So anyways, hopefully this little bit of information helps just to clear up some of the different types of wrappers and where they're from and what kind of tasting notes and information you can gather from those wrappers. This has been another episode of Finn's Stogie School.